for a job. Instead, I walked into a workshop that slowly turned my whole life upside down. One moment, I was just another guy desperate for work. The next, I was standing in a place where every sound, every look, and every word felt like it meant more than I understood at the time. My name is Bob. I am 22 years old, and I live alone in a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town, close enough to hear the old highway at night. It is not much, but it is what I can afford while I try to figure out what I am doing with my life. A month ago, I worked nights at a warehouse loading and unloading trucks. It was tiring, but it paid the bills. Then one morning, the manager called everyone together and said the company was restructuring. My job disappeared in less than 5 minutes. No warning. No backup plan. Just a handshake and a sorry look. For the past week, I had been walking around town with my backpack, applying everywhere. Construction sites, delivery places, small stores, temp agencies. Anything that would let me start right away. Every place said the same thing. "We will call you." None of them did. That morning, after already hearing no 4 times, my legs felt heavy and my head felt full. I stepped into a small coffee shop just to sit down for a minute. The smell of roasted beans and fresh pastries hit me right away. It felt warm and calm in a way I really needed. I sat by the window and leaned back, trying to breathe out the stress. That is when she walked up to my table. Her name was Isla. I did not know that yet, but I noticed her eyes first. Calm, kind, and observant. The kind of eyes that notice when someone is not okay. She set a glass of water on my table before I even ordered and said, "Rough morning." I tried to brush it off, but I guess the exhaustion showed. I told her I was looking for a job and that I would probably apply to every business in town by the end of the week. I do not know why, but I found myself being honest with her. More honest than I usually am with strangers. She leaned on the edge of the table, thinking. Then she asked what kind of work I was looking for. "Anything," I said. "Something I can start right away." She smiled a little. "My dad runs a small woodworking shop outside of town. He keeps saying he needs help, but he is stubborn. He does not like hiring people." Woodworking was not something I knew anything about. I told her that. She just shrugged and said he did not need a carpenter. Just someone who could lift things, clean up, and actually show up on time. There was nothing fake about the way she said it. She was not promising anything. Just offering a real chance. She wrote down an address on a small notepad and slid it across the table. "Go tomorrow morning," she said. "If he is in a good mood, he will at least hear you out." I stared at the paper. She did not know me. I did not know her. And yet, she was helping me more than anyone had in weeks. When I looked up, she gave me a warm smile that made me believe things might actually turn around. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. I barely slept. That little piece of paper sat on my nightstand like it meant something important. I put on my cleanest jeans and a plain gray hoodie and tried not to look too nervous in the mirror. The workshop was on the edge of town behind a chain-link fence, a wide, low building with a faded sign that read Grant Woodworks. The smell of cut wood hit me as soon as I stepped off the bus. Inside, the sound of a saw stopped suddenly. A man in his late 50s turned toward me. Strong build, gray hair, thick hands. He looked at me like he already knew I did not belong. "Can I help you?" he asked. I introduced myself and mentioned his daughter. The moment I said her name, something changed in his expression. Not softer, just different. He told me he was not running a charity. I told him I just needed a chance. After a long silence, he pointed to a corner. "Brooms are over there. Sweep the whole floor." That was it. No welcome. Just a test. I swept for hours. Sawdust in my nose, arms burning, sweat soaking through my clothes. He watched me without saying much. The shop slowly started to feel less intimidating and more real. Around midday, the door opened, and a familiar voice said, "Hey, Dad." I looked up and saw Isla walking in with lunch. She smiled when she saw me, like she had not been sure I would show up. That smile made something shift inside me. And I had no idea yet that this workshop, this man, and his daughter were about to change everything. After Isla arrived with lunch, the shop felt different. Not quieter or louder, just warmer, like her presence softened the sharp edges of the place. Her dad barely spoke while he ate, but I noticed how his eyes moved between her and me, like he was measuring something he did not fully trust yet. Isla walked over to where I stood with the broom. She looked at the cleaner floor and smiled. "You actually survived your first few hours," she said quietly. "Barely," I answered, and she laughed under her breath. Her laugh surprised me. It echoed gently through the shop and made the space feel less like a test and more like somewhere people actually live their lives. While her dad ate at his workbench, she stood beside me and asked how it was going. I told her honestly that I felt like I was being watched every second. "That means he has not decided to kick you out," she said. "That is a good sign." After lunch, she had to go back to the coffee shop. Before leaving, she looked at me and said, "You are doing great." Then she was gone, and the shop felt heavier again. The rest of the afternoon, her dad gave me small tasks. Move stacks of wood, hold pieces steady while he cut, carry boxes from storage. He did not explain much, just short instructions and long looks. I focused on doing everything carefully, paying attention, trying to stay one step ahead. By the time the sun started to dip, my body ached, and my clothes were covered in dust. He shut off the last machine and looked around the shop. Then he turned to me. "You tired?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "But it is a good tired." He studied me for a moment. "Come back tomorrow," he said. "Let us see if you actually stick around." It was not a promise, but it felt like hope. The next morning, I arrived early. The shop lights were already on, and Mr. Grant was standing at cabinet door like he had been there for hours. He did not greet me. He just told me to grab gloves and get to work. The rhythm of the day settled in quickly. Organizing scrap wood, sorting hardware, sweeping corners he claimed I missed. His standards were high, and his patience was low. But somehow, I found myself matching his pace. Around mid-morning, the door opened again. I did not need to turn around to know it was Isla. The air changed the moment she walked in. She brought coffee, one for her dad, one for me. "You looked half dead yesterday," she said as she handed me the cup. "I was not half dead," I replied, "maybe a little less." She laughed again, and for a moment even her dad seemed less tense. She stayed for a bit, leaning against a table while I worked. We talked quietly about simple things. Her job at the cafe, how long her dad had run the shop, how she used to help here when she was younger. At one point she grew quieter. She told me she and her dad did not always see eye to eye. He wanted her to stay close, maybe even take over the business one day. She wanted her own life. "You would think after all these years we would understand each other better," she said. "Maybe you do," I said. "Maybe it just looks different." She looked at me like she was thinking about that. Before leaving for her shift, she glanced back at me from the doorway. That look stayed with me long after she left. That afternoon, Mr. Grant handed me a measuring tape and told me to hold a board steady. We worked side by side in silence. Not uncomfortable silence. Focused silence. I could feel him watching how I moved, how I listened. When we finished for the day, I grabbed my backpack and headed toward the door. Then I saw headlights outside. Isla's car. She stepped out and said she was already nearby and could give me a ride home. I hesitated, but she smiled and said, "I want to." The car smelled like vanilla and old music CDs. It felt oddly familiar. We talked about the day, about work, about nothing important. Then she asked if I liked working at the shop. "I do," I said. "It feels honest." "And I like seeing you," she added quietly. The words stayed between us, heavy but gentle. When she dropped me off, neither of us moved right away. She said she was not usually this comfortable with someone she barely knew. "I feel the same," I said. She smiled and told me to get some rest. That night, lying in my apartment, I realized I was not just showing up for a job anymore. I was showing up for her. And I did not know how that would end. But I knew I wanted to find out. I woke up the next morning with a tight feeling in my chest. It was not just about the work anymore. It was about Isla. The way she looked at me. the way her voice softened in the car, and the man standing between us, whether he meant to or not. When I reached the workshop, Mr. Grant was already there, arms crossed, waiting. He did not waste time. "We need to talk," he said. He flipped the sign on the door to "closed" and looked at me with that sharp stare of his. He told me his daughter deserved someone who knew what he was doing with his life. Someone stable. Someone certain. "You are young," he said. "You just lost your job. There is nothing wrong with that, unless you drag someone else into it." My throat felt dry. I told him I was there to work, that I was not trying to cause problems. "If you are here for her, leave," he said. "If you are here to work, prove it." That day was harder than any before. He pushed me nonstop. More work, less patience. I did not slow down. I did not complain. If this was a test, I was not going to fail it. Around noon, Isla walked in with lunch. She could tell something was wrong. She asked me quietly if her dad said something. "He has expectations," I said, "and I get it." She looked sad, like she had heard this story before. After she left, the shop felt colder. The rest of the day passed in heavy silence. When we finished, I was ready to leave when I heard her voice outside. "Are you avoiding me?" she asked. I told her I did not want to cause problems. She stepped closer and asked if I was pulling away because I wanted to, or because I felt like I had to. "I do not want to," I said. She touched my arm lightly and told me not to pull away then. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, the shop was quiet. Mr. Grant worked on a cabinet when a shelf slipped off the bench. I reacted without thinking and caught it before it hit the ground. He shut off the machine and stared at me. "You react fast," he said. I told him I cared about the shop. He looked around at the clean floor, the organized tools. For the first time, he did not look disappointed. Before we could say more, Isla walked in. Her dad finally spoke. "He shows up," he said. "He works hard, and he cares." Then he looked at me and told me not to hurt her. It was not approval, but it was permission. Outside, Isla told me she had been scared I would leave. I told her I cared about her. She took my hand, and for the first time, I felt like I was no longer standing between two worlds. I was standing in one that might actually be mine. After that morning, everything felt different, but not in a dramatic way. It was quieter than that, steadier. Like something heavy had finally settled into place. When we walked back into the workshop hand in hand, her dad saw us and nodded once before turning back to his work. No comments, no warnings. That was his way of accepting what he could not control anymore. The rest of the day passed smoothly. I worked beside him, and for the first time he corrected me without snapping. Small things. How to hold a piece steadier. How to measure twice before cutting. They were not compliments, but they were trust. During lunch, Isla sat with us. We talked about normal things. Customers at the cafe. Orders coming in for the shop. Nothing heavy, nothing tense. It felt real, like this was how things were supposed to be all along. Over the next few weeks, I kept showing up early. I learned the rhythm of the shop, the sounds of each machine, the way her dad liked things done. Slowly, he stopped watching me so closely. Slowly, he started leaving tasks to me without checking behind. Isla and I started spending more time together.